Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Welcome to our second Seaside Chat. I'm going to share my screen right now. Okay. And hopefully Drew will let me know if that didn't work. Oh, great turnout today. Thanks to everyone for joining. It's really good to see you. This is our second Seaside Chat, and we really appreciate you joining us today. My name is Ashley Bennis, and I am a coastal planning specialist with Texas Sea Grant, and I'm located in the Coastal Bend region. Before we start, we like to try and get a measure of what people know and what they learn. So we are going to put out a poll, and a quick poll that we would like you to answer. And then we're going to also end with a poll. So if you wouldn't mind taking a couple minutes, it would be really helpful for us. There we go. And then Drew, just let me know when I'm good to go. All right. Okay, so today I wanted to talk about the concept of planning for resilience, and this includes whole community resilience, which is physical resilience, environmental resilience, individual resilience, economic resilience, any kind of resilience you can think of. The environment around us is changing rapidly, and how we relate to our environment is also changing. But there are tools and resources available to help communities and residents consider how they can be more resilient in face of these challenges, of these changes, as well as to natural disasters. So I just wanted to start off by giving you an idea of the Sea Grant program. Texas Sea Grant is part of a national extension program with NOAA. And as you can see by the map, there are 34 programs across the country. Anywhere there's a coastline, there's most likely a Sea Grant program. And here in Texas, it is a unique partnership that unites the federal government, the state government, and Texas universities across the state. And we get together to try and create knowledge, tools, products, and services that benefit the economy, the environment, and the citizens of Texas. And we do this through our 4 focus areas, which is resilient communities and economies, sustainable fisheries and aquacultures, healthy coastal ecosystems, and STEM education and workforce development. Now, I am part of the Community Resilience Collaborative, which is a research and extension-based coastal planning program that combines the reach and resources of Texas A&M University programs, the Texas Sea Grant, and the Texas Sea Grant College program. We have 4 specialists along the coast and 4 specialists, so 3 planning specialists and 1 natural resource specialist. We have 1 in the upper coast. We have planning specialists and the natural resource specialist in the Coastal Bend, and we have 1 in the Rio Grande Valley. And as you can see by our goals of the program, we work with communities to help them create and adopt high quality plans. We also introduce them to tools and resources from the university to help them address and increase their resilience to hazards and protect their natural and built resources using sound science. Now, I wanted to start this conversation by giving you an image to think about while I'm talking about resilience and some of the examples of tools. Changes in the environment have already increased flooding across the United States, and particularly in coastal and low-lying areas. So we are seeing more extreme rain events. We are seeing sea level rise. We are seeing the effect of warming seas. So this particular image I found is at floodfactor.com. Try saying that 5 times fast. And it's a free online tool created by the nonprofit First Street Foundation. And it makes it easy for people to find their property's current and future flood risk, learn if it was flooded in the past, and understand how flood risks are changing because of the environment. And if you look at it, you can see that you get a couple of different colors here. So there is dark purple to light purple. Dark purple means that more properties in that region are going to experience some level of increased flood risk over the next 30 years. So because of the changes to the environment, more than 16.2 million properties will have substantial risk in 30 years. Texas alone will see an increase in the number of properties with substantial risk at a 15.9% increase. Along with coastal flooding, communities also need to consider their sea level rise, stronger hurricanes, high wind events, droughts, and access to water. So I wanted to talk about the city of Rockport because I've worked with them extensively over the last couple of years. If they sound familiar, it's probably because you've heard about Hurricane Harvey. Hurricane Harvey made landfall as a Category 5 in Aransas County on August 7, 2017, and it caused extensive damage across the whole county. As you can see in the pictures over here on the far left, many of their tourist attractions, which helps build their economy, supports their economy, were devastated and destroyed. They're still working on rebuilding them. Harvey made landfall with wind speeds of 150 to 165 miles per hour winds. And as you can see for their downtown heritage district, this picture in the middle, it caused a lot of damage to buildings. Some buildings were not able to recover. And all of the multifamily housing in Aransas County experienced some level of damage, which adversely affected the working population that supports the tourist community. A lot of these people the tourist industry, a lot of these people lived in multifamily housing or low income housing. And as you can see by this picture on the right, that's not a livable building. They could not go back. So they had to leave the county. And as a result, some of them were not able to come back. Right after Harvey, the county lost about 24% of its tax revenue, which is pretty significant. And on top of that, they sustained some damage to a lot of their government buildings, including their courthouse and their original emergency operations center. An emergency operations center is used in an emergency for first responders and the emergency manager to hold up while the disaster is happening and to know what's going on. So the first resources that I think is important for communities to look at is partnerships with university and Sea Grant programs. This is Target Texas Target Communities is a high impact service learning and community outreach program at Texas A&M University. And they do this through partnering with small, low capacity communities that assist with needs that would otherwise go unmet. In the summer of 2018, the city of Rockport and Texas Target Communities and Texas Sea Grant partnered together to help the city update their comprehensive plan. A comprehensive plan is a document that can help guide a community growth and development over 20 years. And they learned a lot of things after Harvey, so they wanted to take that knowledge and update their plans and make it more relevant for the future. And they focus on this updating the comprehensive plan through an integrative planning model that uses engagement, social learning, service, and research. Now, in the case of Rockport, we had partnered with a lot of university students, which proved to be a really helpful and important aspect of the project. We partnered with 8 courses at 3 different universities who, as you can see over here on the left, helped to provide research, outreach, and data collection in these areas that usually are within a comprehensive plan document. Texas Target Community used their model to create a task force, which was made up of local community members and diverse interests. For Rockport, we had 10 task force members, which represented different aspects of the community to help provide guidance and to help us make sense of the feedback we were getting from the 4 public meetings we had with over 200 participants. And as you can see in these pictures, this was from one of our first public meetings. It was a really successful meeting. We had over 80 participants. We were at the high school. And one thing we really tried to do was to provide an environment for many people with different backgrounds to come and give us their feedback. So that included providing a child's corner where we had different games and we had someone watching them so that their parents could pay attention and participate in the meeting. And it was very interesting. We also worked with the community, worked with Amanda Torres, to apply for the American Planning Association Foundation grant, which is to help with downtown recovery from planning experts all over the country. So we got this grant, and it helped provide us with 5 expert planning professionals that had backgrounds in downtown recovery, in transportation, in environment. And so they came and they worked with the community for a week and learned as much as they could, and they provided a report afterwards. All of these partnerships were very important, and out of them came these wonderful reports that are helping the community provide suggestions and mechanisms for guiding growth in safe, responsible, inclusive ways. So we worked with Texas Tech University, their landscape architecture department, and they helped provide us with a guide to green infrastructure and low impact development. And they used relevant spatial regions from Rockport. So they actually came to see Rockport, not just provide us with a bunch of guides for any city, but specifically for Rockport. We also worked with the Texas A&M University School of Law to think about legal mechanisms for mitigating flood impacts. These mechanisms can be used to help reduce vulnerabilities in the community, but a lot of these mechanisms, people don't think about them, communities don't have time to look at them. So those students were particularly helpful. And then our recovery planning assistant team provided us with this wonderful report, this city with a wonderful report about downtown Rockport. We also utilized this tool, the Plan Integration for Resilience Scorecard, which was created by Dr. Philip Burke, a previous director of the Institute for Sustainable Communities, and Jamie Masterson, which is the Associate Director of Texas Target Communities and also faculty in the Landscape Architecture and Urban Planning Department at Texas A&M University. And it was created because it was recognized that there was a growing problem with communities having a plethora of plans that do not work together or work at odds with one another and increase vulnerabilities within the community. For example, this is the comprehensive plan, and it has a policy that talks about increasing and bolstering the number of key destinations in the downtown and the waterfront to provide components and uses catering to different audiences. But if you look at their hazard and hazard mitigation plan, they have a policy that talks about strengthening controls on development and development within flood prone and wetland areas by improving existing ordinances and strengthening building codes. So these are 2 different policies that talk about 2 different things in the very same region. The downtown region and their hazard zones are the same. So there's examples like this across communities. Often cities are swimming in plans. Even small communities can have 4 or more plans guiding their development and management. At any given time, these plans are typically developed by multiple stakeholder groups and pursue a variety of goals. And there's rarely a fully coordinated effort, particularly with respect to resilience. So we can help guide the community through the process of reviewing each of their plans and looking for spatially relevant policies that can be mapped. First, we establish teams to carry out each step of the process. Mapping team and policy teams are really important for this, but we also have a scoring team. And then we designate hazard zones by looking at planning districts. So we break up the community into these planning districts. These are these planning districts which help us to break down and look at policies in a more relevant way. Then we gather documents from the community's network of plans and evaluate policy by policy. A +1, 0, or -1 score are given to each policy in districts based on whether they affect vulnerability, influences land use, and can be spatially assigned. So just like that example I just used, if we were to map those and score them, we would give it a -1 because they're in conflict with each other and they can create more vulnerabilities in the community. So we then overlay planning districts in the hazards. So after we create the districts, we overlay them over mappable areas such as hazard zone, conservation areas, and then we score. And in the case of Rockport, this is the map that we helped to create for them with the different districts, which we work closely with the community planner to create these. And then we put the hazard zones. So we looked at all of these various plans. This is just a collection of some of them. And we made this map, mapping the policies and scoring them for each of these plans. And I'm not going to show you all of those, but this is what we came up with. And the darker the score, the more plans work in to increase resilience. So the dark areas have more increased resilience in theory. Conversations can be started about this. The lighter the area, the more that there are policies in conflict, and the more that the community can think about looking at those specific areas to see what they can change or what they can think about to make it more resilient. For instance, when communities are able to assess their surroundings before and after a disaster, they can learn useful lessons such as alternatives to hard, rigid structures. So it was recognized that many existing living shorelines in the areas fared well through the storm and recovered a little better than the hard, rigid structures. As you can see in this example here, there is a bulkhead and the water came over, and there's the creation of erosion, which weakens the structure and can cause it to buckle, and it's not protecting anything after that. And even not during a disaster, in a sunny day rain or a sunny day flood or something, they experience some level of flooding along this road. So 2 living shoreline projects, Aransas County was awarded money and federal funds to evaluate living shorelines measures to protect approximately 8,000 feet of eroding shoreline along Little Bay and parts of Fulton Beach Road. So this is a concept of the project. They are still working with the community to educate and try and come to a understanding about these projects. But it's stuff like this where if you review your plans and if you review after a disaster what worked and what didn't, you can kind of start to create a path towards recovery. And so just a little snippet from their comprehensive plan. Throughout the plan, other community documents were integrated and different aspects of community resilience were considered. The above themes are just a snapshot. We didn't really help them, but we like to create a new vision statement, and that was all the community. They came up with themselves, and we came up with these different themes. We really asked the community thinking about what they felt they wanted to keep, what they felt made them a strong community, and what they prized above all else. And so strong, resilient economies are diversified, and they diversify their workforce and their industries, and that way that if something goes wrong or if a disaster hit, then they have multiple avenues to go to make sure that they don't have some economic distress. Thanks for the feedback from the high school students. We incorporated inclusive language and goals that focused on every stage of life for youth and adults, children, and elderly. And the environment was a consistent theme that was brought up every meeting. So they really pride their environment. They're home to a lot of the migration patterns there, and a lot of birds go through there. And so they really wanted to promote conservation and protection of natural resources in the environment. So the plan integration for Resilience Scorecard was also applied to the port for the first time. So we worked with the Port of Corpus Christi on assessing their resilience, and they are very integrated into the community. They're very close. On the next slide, I'll show you a map. So we wanted them to look at their plans along with the community plans to see where there might be some conflicts, because the port is continuing to grow. They're right now in the middle of a dredging project because they cannot accept huge VLLCs. They have to do some offshore loading, and that can cause problems and can cause waste. So they would like to make a deeper channel so that they can make ease of use. While they're doing this and developing, we looked at a lot of their plans and the plans of the community around them, because as you can see, they have some protection here from the extremes of the Gulf of Mexico, but this is the port area right there. And this is the downtown area. It's a very dense community. Here's the community. So they're really integrated in the community. So we looked at their hazard plan, their hurricane readiness plan. And again, in this area, the darker the score, the more resilient that sector, that district can be. the lighter the score, the more they need to consider some conflicts. So we looked at the comprehensive plan for downtown, and in this area, this is an example how we had some plans talk about how they wanted to develop more in these regions and foster growth. But this is also a hazard region that experiences a lot of flooding and hazards. So they really gave them some thoughts about reconsidering that and thinking about how they can grow in a more responsible way. And then we provided them. So that was the first time it was applied to a report. We learned a lot. There were some things that didn't quite work that worked with the community. So we would like to kind of grow the plan integration for a resilience scorecard and consider how it can be more applied to that. And then the Coastal Resilience Index is a self-assessment tool. It's community leaders can use the tool to guide discussion about their community's resilience to coastal hazards. It empowers coastal communities and it gets them to consider things like scenario development, critical infrastructure, transportation issues, business, social systems. There's a variety of things that they consider in this plan. And they identify weaknesses that makes communities vulnerable to the negative effects of coastal hazards and provide these communities with a starting place to address those weaknesses. So taking into consideration some of the financial and resource limitations that some communities have. So we do work a lot with low capacity communities that might not have the financial resources to come up with strategies and come up with projects to like increase their resilience. So we try to work with them to assess what they have and where low-hanging fruit they can improve. So first we talk about one of the worst previous hazards that the community had, and from then we create a different hazard scenario with different aspects. So say the community was hit by a Category 2 hurricane that had lots of rain and not very much storm surge 5 years ago. So we take that and maybe we up the category to a Category 4. So it's got higher wind. So some of the buildings that survived before might not survive then. And then we up the storm surge and we say maybe they'll experience 6 feet of storm surge, which is quite a lot. And with that scenario in mind, we ask these questions determining how resilient they are. And we do this by scoring with a low, medium, high, which I'll get into later. And so as you can see, we try to get a lot of variety of people to the table and ask them questions and get them engaged in conversation. And one thing I always am surprised about in these scenarios, in these situations with communities, is a lot of these departments express that they've never really sat down and talked to each other. Like they've never talked about what plans they have. They're not really even sure what their emergency operation plans are, and they just work within their silos. So this is a great way to get a conversation started. So some example of the pages, community plans and agreements. So through that scenario, as you can see here, we ask them these questions about their systems, about their plans, about their operations, and we end up with a score. So it's a low, medium, high. And again, it's not really about the score. We really try to encourage that it's not about the score, because some communities will get very fixated on it. And it's not about it. It's about more of the conversations that happen around the score and how these people consider what they have and what they still need to implement. So a recent community that did it in 2014, we provided them with some areas for future action. And like I said, this could be low-hanging fruit, some small steps they can take to increase their community rating system score, or to get some people out of harm's way. And then we come up with long-term actions that they can look at over a course of a couple years, 5 years, 10 years, to help them really just consider how they can be more resilient. And one of the last things I really wanted to talk about is individual resilience, because it's just as important, if not more so, than community resilience. As part of a community resilience, it's important to think about your own individual resilience. Better building practices can help families to recover quicker and save the integrity of their values. Coastal communities and communities in hazard zones tend to adopt building codes and ordinances that give them a standard by which to build their property to protect from aspects such as high winds and flooding, but often these standards are not as strict as they could be. Building codes in traditional sense, a life safety mechanism, set of requirements adopted and enforced by the city. But communities and individuals can decide to build at a higher standard. So as you can see here, Alabama and Mississippi have forged partnerships with Smart Home America, a program through the Insurance Institute for Business and Home Safety, and insurance providers to offer incentives in form of mitigation credit and discounts. They are already seeing positive effects, and this program is known as Fortified. And it's a higher standard of building your house so that instead of having this, you have something that's still standing after a storm. And there's different levels about it, which we'll go at. And they're already seeing examples of this working. And in previous storms, such as Hurricane Michael, Florence, and Harvey, they've seen some significant results. So this is a picture from Hurricane Michael. It came ashore in the panhandle of Florida as a Hurricane 5. And as you can see by the picture, it was pretty devastating. It caused a lot of damage in the area and destruction. So 6 houses were a part of the Habitat Strong program, an above code construction program modeled on the recommendations of Fortified, and an insurance industry nonprofit that advocates for more resilient building practices. So among all the debris and stuff, what comes through are these homes that still have their roof intact, and as you can see, seem to be relatively less affected than the ones around them. And I think if you live on the coast, then you've seen pictures of Hurricane Ike and pictures where there's one house standing amidst of a community where no other house is standing. And it's in these situations where more than likely it's because that house was built at a higher standard than the houses around it. So Smart Home America is a 501c3 not-for-profit organization based in Mobile, Alabama. They advise communities, homeowners, and businesses about benefits of resilience, mitigation, and adequate insurance coverage. It's a nationally recognized standard based off of 20 years of research done by Smart Home America. I highly suggest that you visit their website because it not only goes over the program, but it also shows video of the research that they've done, such as the picture I showed in the previous slide with the 2 houses. They do a lot of research on what causes a house to fail. And it's pretty interesting and a little scary to watch. But there are fortified standards for resident and commercial buildings, and a third-party evaluator is used to assess the structure. And once they get all the checks and inspections, a certificate is issued. And in some states, and we're working on this in Texas, it can create incentives on your insurance, and it can save you money. And so one of the things they really focus on is a continuous load path from the roof all the way down to the floor, to ensure that the house stays intact and that there's no weaknesses. And so what does it mean to be fortified? Texas, in the coastal bend, most of the jurisdictions have enforced a recent code on top of what they have. So we get 3 different levels of fortified. The IBHS certified roof, which is the first level, helps homeowners to keep their roof on and keep water out during hurricanes, high winds, hail, and severe thunderstorm. So it's standards for your roof that ensure that not only does it stay on during a storm, but it doesn't leak water and get everything inside your house wet. The next standard is fortified silver, which includes all the requirements of fortified roof, plus it addresses damage from broken windows and failures of doors, weak gable ends, and poorly anchored attached structures such as porch and carport roofs. And this is really important because they are finding in storms and through their research that it really only takes one weakness in your home. Window goes out or a door flies open and the whole house, it has the pressure of the wind forces exerted on it, so it can blow off the roof and it can blow out the walls. Again, if you visit their website at smarthomeamerica.org, you can see some of the videos of this. And then the final standard is fortified gold, which includes all fortified roof and silver requirements and resists damage from a category 3. So it ups the ante to wind speeds of a category 3. So it's really fascinating. And like I said, they're working in Texas right now with the Texas Wind Insurance Association to kind of come up with some standards and some credits that they can give people who do this. And it doesn't have to be necessary. You can still be fortified even if your house is already built. Now, to be at a gold standard, you need to start from the ground up. You need to start right when you're building, but to be fortified roof, there can be retrofits that you can put on your house that costs a little bit of money, but saves you over the long run. And I believe that is it. This is my contact information. If you have any questions, I have resources on all of the things I talked about today. And I believe that we have questions. If anyone has questions that they want to put in the chat box, we can answer them. And yeah, thank you so much for joining me today. And if there are no questions, which anyone could ask a question, I see someone raising their hand. Oh. So I see Tony is raising his hand. Drew, do we want to let him talk? Is that a thing, or does he have to chat box his question? Q&A.
You type your question into the Q&A function. It's
Thanks, guys. Thanks, ladies. Okay. Do that. And if there are no questions, oh, yeah. Thanks, Lauren. Do you have a process to prioritize communities you work with based on capacity needs? At this time, we don't. So the CRC program started in the beginning of 2018. So it's a relatively new program, and we to date have worked with the city of Rockport and Willisey County, and in Baffin Bay region, and cities of Hitchcock and Montgomery. And that was a process through Texas Target Communities where you can apply to get their resources. But the CRC is working right now on compiling their menu of services and creating a letter of intent so that we can get communities, communities apply for the services. Usually it is the low capacity as far as if they have financial resources, that is something we really consider. And after Harvey, a lot of communities struggled more than others. Even after Hannah, we saw a lot of struggling. So those communities sometimes we'll look into first, but there's no level. And I know, thanks, Tony. And I know before you leave, we would love it if you would take our exit poll. This will help us to discern how we're doing and kind of give us more insight into our next Seaside Chats. We have Seaside Chats every 2 weeks. Please join us again. All of our specialists are taking part. So every 2 weeks, we're going to be talking about a new subject, and it's really fascinating. Last week, Morgan talked about some coastal restoration projects, and I believe her presentation is available. I know there's a recording of it. You can find more information. What are the mitigation credits that you mentioned associated with Smart Home in America and Fortified program? So those mitigation credits right now are only available in Alabama and Mississippi, I believe. I think maybe one of the Carolinas. And those are something kind of like the NFIP and the CRS program, where a community rating system where if you have a high score, then they can give you deductions on insurance for the whole community. So right now, Fortified and Smart Home in America has had meetings with TWIA, with the Texas Wind Insurance Association, to think about some of those credits. So to think about something for homeowners that adopt these practices. So it is not set in stone yet, but once it is, Sea Grant will be rolling that out and talking more about it, and we will be holding workshops with communities and leaders and stuff to introduce them to this concept so that people are aware of it. I know right now, one of the few communities in Rockport, in Texas, that has it is Key Allegro in Rockport. But yeah, let me know if that answered your question. Yeah. Thanks for joining, everyone. And I believe right after this poll will be over. So hope everyone has a great day. Thank you.